Hey guys, I'm going to solve example 2516 from the book. It's making sales mix decisions. We briefly touched on this in class, and it's a little bit more complicated than some of the other questions that we answered. So if you don't have a firm grasp on the other topics, I would suggest Xing out this video and watching the other topics and spending more time studying those. However, this did occur in the chapter and we briefly covered it in class, so just in case he throws us a curveball with this little wrinkle in here, I wanted to talk about it a little further so that way we won't be completely surprised if a question like this does occur. So the unique thing about this question is, rather than just comparing contribution margin when making a decision between two options, we have to look at the contribution margin and the constraint, and we have to see which of the two decisions has a higher contribution margin based on the constraint. And if you'll remember, a constraint can be anything like something that stops production, like we don't have enough machine hours, we don't have enough labor, we can't sell all the items that we want. So those things are constraining our decision. So I'll just quickly read this question and just go over the topic briefly, just so everyone will have an overview. The question says, more company sells both designer and moderately priced fashion accessories. Top management is deciding which product line to emphasize. Accountants have provided the following data. And here's the data. I've transposed it over here on the side so that way we can just quickly arrive at an answer. They have all average sales, average variable cost. It's basically a contribution margin income statement, and they've done all that for us. And here's the important part. The Moore Company store in Grand Junction, Colorado has 14,000 square feet of floor space. If Moore Company emphasizes moderately priced goods, it can display 840 items in the store. If Moore Company emphasizes designer wear, it can display only 560 designer items. These numbers are also the average monthly sales in units. Prepare an analysis to show the product the company should emphasize. Okay, so they told us they only have 14,000 square feet. And if they emphasize moderately priced, they can sell 840 items a month. If they emphasize designer, they can sell 560. So I have the sales written right here for each item. So we can no longer, because these sales numbers are different, we can no longer compare contribution margin, average contribution margin, from one to the other, because the average contribution margin doesn't mean anything if we're selling a whole bunch more of one than the other. We have to take the total contribution margin and then divide it by our constraint, and that will give us which one produces at a higher level based on the constraint. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply out all these numbers based on the sales to get the total average sales. I'm going to get the total variable cost, and then finally get the total contribution margin, divide that by the constraint, and that will tell us whichever one is higher, that's the one that we should emphasize more. So I'm going to simply quickly do this, take the sales number, I'm going to fix that, multiply it times this value to get the total sales. If we sell 560 at a price of 185, we're going to have total sales of 103,000. And I can just drag this down to get the same multiplication value for all of these. Notice that I locked the cells, and that's why they're all multiplying correctly. And I'll do the same thing over here. Equals this, press F4 to lock the cell. Multiply times, press enter, and then just drag this down. Okay, so now we have the total contribution margin. So The total contribution margin for the designer is $44,000. The total contribution margin for this one is $54,000. So this gives us a notice how the contribution margin changed. Over here, the average contribution margin was higher than this average contribution margin. But now you'll notice that the total contribution margin for this is lower than the total contribution margin for this. So now, in order to complete the answer, we need to see not just the total contribution margin, but we need to see the total contribution margin divided by the constraint. So the constraint, I've just written it right here, it's 1,400 square feet. So I've written the formula here. Contribution margin per square foot is equal to total contribution margin divided by total square feet. So we'll take the total contribution margin for this one divided by total square feet, and it's $3.20 per square foot for the designer. And then for the moderately priced, it's the same thing. You take the total contribution margin, divide it by the constraint, and you get $3.90 per square foot. And that is our answer. The moderately priced has a higher contribution margin per square foot, per the constraint. So we would choose to emphasize the moderately priced item. Okay, and just to check the answer, I have the answer here from the book, and it says, it doesn't give us the total, the final answer, but it does say contribution margin square foot designer is $3.20, and that's $3.20. So that means we calculated it correctly. So that means this calculation is also correct because we calculated it the same way, and that means that the answer is correct. So once again, this is just a little wrinkle in some of the previous problems. I don't think it'll be on the test. Don't pay this a lot of attention if you're not comfortable with the other kinds of problems, but if you do get a constraint question, just remember to take your contribution margin and divide it by the constraint. That's it, and good luck on the test.